The problem with what the president is doing is that he's not simply posing a danger to the constitutional system. He's becoming the very danger the Constitution was designed to avoid, and that is the concentration of power in every single branch. So joining us now to talk about that and so much more is Remi Spencer, criminal defense attorney, and you watch her on the Fox News channel. She'll be on Cavuto later today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to talk to you. I'll just push that a little closer to you.
Thank you.
So what do you make? I mean, if it were only Obamacare, it would be bad enough. But here's a guy who, with the welfare reform, lowered the requirement for work in it. When it came to DOMA, way before the Supreme Court decision, he decided they're not going to enforce it. It goes on and on and on. Immigration, he tells ICE what to do, who to deport, who not to deport. It's becoming an epidemic with him, and it really is a power grab.
It is a power grab, and I do believe that the president, his actions create an impression that the people can't trust him anymore. The president has the authority to enforce the laws, uphold the laws. He doesn't have more, he doesn't have less. But his selective decision about when he's going to enforce something, for example, the employer mandate. For example, when he gets up and says, you can keep your plan and then you can't, and doesn't really accept responsibility for his misstatements, what he knew, when he knew it. These are issues that the American people are rightly concerned about, because if we can't trust our president, our commander-in-chief, it calls into question a whole number of other things.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I just did a whole segment before at the top of the show about how he wants to be on Sports Center when he retires, and how he's just a phony sports fan too. He doesn't even know names of players, so that's a myth as well. But to your point, the younger generation of people who were just polled, young voters who helped get him elected, they're deserting him on every level. They're deserting him with Obamacare, which is really bad news for Obamacare because they need those kids to sign up.
That's right.
But on every level, they don't trust him. They're disappointed in him. I mean, it seems universal.
I'm going to date myself now.
What is it like to date yourself? Where do you take yourself?
Oh, please. I'm 37 years old. I was born in 1976, and I grew up. I remember the people not trusting government after the Nixon scandal. And it is sad to say that I feel like history is repeating itself. Certainly, we don't have the same exact scandal with President Obama, but we do have one incident after another after another. And if the youth of this country is questioning its federal government, its leaders of the nation, the way we did when I was growing up, it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs.
It is. And you talk about Nixon, and I think it was Newt Gingrich who started this little bit of a, if you want to call it a controversy, when he said that the lie that Obama told is much worse than the lie that Nixon told. And I mean, Nixon was involved in a cover-up of a burglary, which really didn't affect you or me or any of the American public. But Obama lied about for 3 years that you could keep your doctor, you could keep your health plan, and you can't. And next year, 100 million of us are going to lose our doctor and our health care plan.
Look, I have great reservations and fears about Obamacare, but I am not willing to go as far as Newt Gingrich and say that what President Obama has done is worse than the cover-up of a crime. You're talking to a criminal defense attorney.
Okay, no, I get that.
And I believe very deeply in our state and federal criminal laws, and I think when we start talking about violations of those kinds of laws, it is a different story altogether. I'm not saying one is worse than the other. I'm saying we're comparing apples to oranges.
Okay, but for the American people, he's done more harm to the American people than Nixon did, I think.
Well, I think trying to rewrite the health care law the way he has, then the way he's blundered the rollout, the way he's lied to the American people, and then the way he's selectively enforcing it has a greater impact on a far greater number of people.
Absolutely. We're talking right now to Remi Spencer, and you could watch her on the Fox News channel, criminal defense attorney here on the Steve Malzberg Show. All right, let's talk about a couple cases that are out there. The Florida family of a woman, you remember the Navy Yard shooting a few months back. She was killed during the shooting at the Washington Navy Yard. They're the first to file a lawsuit against the government and defense contractors, saying that the officials ignored red flags about the killer's mental health, and that they should have been more aware after what occurred in Fort Hood. So do they have a leg to stand on here?
They do. I absolutely think they do. We have to look at whether or not they knew or should have known that this man posed a danger. Did he pose a threat? There's a heightened standard because he has security clearance. He has access to weapons. And then the second question is, what could they have done to stop this? If they should have known about it under the law, then what could they have done, and would those measures have been reasonable? Would those accommodations have been reasonable? And here, the victim's family's lawyer is claiming in its complaint that all that needed to be done was institute some basic security measures, which we are all familiar with when you go to a courthouse, you go to an airport. Clearly, that's not an unreasonable or excessive request. So I do think they're going to be successful. I think their request for damages of nearly $40 million.
That's a little excessive, yeah.
That's excessive,
yeah.
But I think they will prevail ultimately.
Now, I don't want to throw you a curve, but how, if at all, would the fact that the government still maintains that Fort Hood, if they're going to bring up Fort Hood as a basis for why the government should have done more, that Fort Hood was a case of workplace violence and not a terrorist attack, will that enter into it at all, that classification?
Well, it might. That's a very good point. I think
I try.
I think the question is, did the shooter in this instance reveal any kind of mental health issues? Did he reveal any type of violence issues, anger management issues? Was he off balance? Did he have psychological problems? Because we're not talking about someone who's filing documents away in a file cabinet with no due respect to a file clerk. We're talking about somebody who was in a position to do exactly this horrific act of violence that he did. And it's for those reasons they need to be more closely attuned to him.
All right, Notre Dame University in the news, and it wasn't for a new football coach or anything this time around. For the second time, Notre Dame filing a legal challenge to Obamacare on the contraception mandate, claiming that the federal government has no constitutional right to compel the school to provide free birth control. Now, we've heard about a lot of these cases, but Notre Dame is a Catholic institution. So this is a little different than the case where, Hobby Lobby, which the Supreme Court said they will hear, where it's a private company and the government claims that if you're a private company or private employer, you have no religious rights. But this is, Notre Dame University. What do you think their chances are here?
You're right. The most important part of this procedurally is that the Supreme Court has not ruled on this issue yet. It is still ripe for determination. Now, I think that Notre Dame has a very interesting claim. It's grounded in First Amendment rights, your freedom to exercise your religion without government intrusion. We know that Obamacare, as it's written, provides no exception for a religious-based entity such as this college. And I think that the court is likely to hear this. Right now, the case is at a district court level. That's the first step in the process.
Long process.
It will be a long process, but I think it's a very important one because Notre Dame is not the only institution.
Oh, no, there's been plenty, yeah.
There are going to be many people affected by this.
Well, what's your take on this as an attorney? I mean, do you feel that, to me, I mean, it's so, I mean, as a layman, who fancies himself as an attorney sometimes, I think this is open and shut. I just don't see how you could tell a religious institution that they have to go against their religious beliefs and provide their employees something that goes against the grain of your religious tenets. I don't see how.
I think you're probably smarter and more well-spoken than most lawyers, so you can fancy
thank you very much. Here you go.
Lawyer.
Give me Chad, get me a shingle. I want a shingle here. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I would say is I believe they have a good chance of success. At its basic level, the First Amendment, the country was based on the principle that we could exercise our own religious rights and freedoms without any interruption, so long as we weren't doing harm to others.
Right.
So I think they have a good chance of success in the law. Also, it's important to note procedurally, the school filed a challenge in the past. A district court judge summarily dismissed it without a real evaluation or analysis under the law. So the school has taken very good steps, reasonable steps to work with the government to come up with a plan, an alternative to this strict compliance with the law. And after over a year, the school has said, we're grateful to the administration for your help. We're grateful for the time and effort you've taken, but it's still not a reasonable accommodation.
No.
And so they had no other choice to go to the courts and ask for a judicial resolution.
All right. Now, speaking of choice, and we're talking to Remi Spencer, criminal defense attorney, Fox News frequent contributor. All right. There's a rabbi who is suing Northwest Airlines. He's a frequent flyer member, and he claims that the airline they terminated him from his frequent flyer program because he complained about various things. Now, there were rumors that he complained about some of the food not being cooked enough or whatever, but that wasn't it. He talked about service. He talked about being kept from on tarmac before taking off and wanting to know what was going on. So I can't believe that this that the question before the U.S. Supreme Court, under what circumstances frequent flyers can sue in these disputes. Does he have a leg to stand on, or is this ridiculous?
This is my knee-jerk reaction to this case was, why in the world is our United States Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, the one that I hold so dear,
wasting time
deciding this issue? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why. Because in the mid-90s, the Supreme Court said that the airlines, under federal regulations for air travel, had free rein to govern all of these types of programs. The reason the court is looking at it again today is really, in my opinion, because they're considering whether there is an exception to that free rein, unbridled, unchecked power that the airlines have. And in this context, it's probably going to come down to an issue of contract law. Basic, simple principles of contract law, which, in my opinion, should exactly be the topic that we're talking about when we talk about frequent flyer miles. Right.
All right, but if the airlines win this, I fear the power. I mean, there's a passenger bill of rights or something, but if the airlines win this, I just think that they're going to consider it. They've just been crowned king of the hill, and they're going to go wild.
It's a legitimate fear. The truth is they've had that power. Yeah. They've had it for quite some time now. So I don't think that the decision, if it were to go in the airline's favor, is going to change much, except it's going to bring to the surface for the American people and all the travelers that they have very limited rights, and that your frequent flyer miles and everything that you pay extra for, it can be taken away at the whim of an airline.
Yeah, very, very frightening. Well, anyway, listen, it's been fun having you. I hope you'll come back.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you. We'll watch you on Cavuto later, and we are joined by Remi Spencer. So fascinating, and it would be very interesting to see what happens with these cases. I love watching these, and I always wanted to be a lawyer, but I guess I didn't have the patience.
I think you were smarter than us who went to law school.
No, I don't think so. Anyway, all right, good seeing you. We're coming back, folks. We have some sound bites in the next hour. We're going to talk to Tony Perkins, Reince Priebus, and we have Dr. Ben Carson coming up. So don't go away. You're here. You know where you are. You're watching the Steve Malzberg Show. You want to weigh in, 877 Newsmax, 877 Newsmax on Newsmax TV and radio. Thank you very much.